And welcome to the Independent Investor Channel Live. We got a special edition this evening. We're going to be discussing Aduro Clean Technologies for the majority of the live stream tonight. For you guys that have been with the channel for quite a long time, you guys realize what I'm trying to strike at here. My daily interaction with people is exactly the same as how I interact here. Now, it's a little bit abnormal to put a camera in front of you and film yourself on social media. If you don't believe me, try it sometimes. It's taken me almost 2,000 videos to become as comfortable as I am in front of a YouTube audience. For those that are new to the channel, welcome. I'd invite you to subscribe to the channel. I'm a hell of a lot different than the average bear, that's for sure. I aim for that. I strike at the difference that people need to try to seek out in their own application. The more you can do that, the better off you'll be. I think you'll find that you'll look at financial markets and the coverage therein as being through the lens of somebody who actually has defined their own personal strategy. And you're able to really set that stuff apart and not be influenced by it. I think it's very important that people really do adhere to a personal strategy that makes sense for themselves. I give you a piece of my insight. I always try to continue to sow for viewers of the channel. What I'm trying to do on this project is really quite simple. I've been a value investor most of my life. And what does that actually mean? There's a few strategies that if you wanted to participate in the stock market, there's a few strategies that I think a lot of people can adhere to. Now, in this country, household debt is at an all-time high. Personal savings is at an all-time low. One of my personal initiatives on the channel is one that I strike at and I share all the time, and that's for people who have either less than $10,000 of invested capital or more. Okay, there's some that have reached that goal. I've reached it many, many times over in many, many different capacities in a lot of different accounts. And I do that to kind of prove to people that it is a barrier that can be broken down. It really is. Why do I share that? I share that with the perspective so that you can understand that I seek out multiple strategies in my application. You just so happen to be monitoring me now at a phenomenal time in my life, barring a very volatile stock market that's really kind of put the value portfolio on somewhat of a hold. But you have to understand, I invest in that capacity for my family. I don't do that for me. Okay. It's nice to see a plan grow. With my financial mind, I have an idea of what type of performance that I can render off of those types of holdings over the course of a lifetime, or maybe even over a legacy to span multiple lifetimes. Okay. So the reason why I share that angle of my investing philosophy is I'm absolutely in tune with the potential of a program like that over time. Now, just here recently, I have been introduced to a few opportunities that have kind of allowed an evolution in my own personal application that I have shared openly through the Independent Investor channel. And that strategy is a little bit more mine. This is a little bit more speaking to the fact that I have worked very, very hard in my life. Speaks to the fact that I did not come from privilege. I've earned every piece of claw back that I've earned. The Independent Investor channel certainly has been a nice bright spot for me. That's for sure. Especially over the last couple of years of volatility, I would suggest, if nothing else, it's helped me buffer the volatility in financial markets. But moreover, I think it is absolutely prudent to identify with some of the network of people that I've been introduced to. Phenomenal people people that I would have never had the chance to meet had it not been for the compliments of social media. And if they come to the Independent Investor channel and they have an opportunity to view my content, they can understand very, very quickly that I'm very sincere about what I do. There's no sugarcoating what I do. There's no fluff. There's no attempt to sell you on an idea that I know that you don't need to be sold on anyway. And I think the timing that we're in right now is fascinating. We are in an environment right now where you have a massive amount of investment going into global climate initiatives, climate change. Now, a lot of you guys can sit back and say, Ryan, climate change doesn't exist. I don't believe in that. No problem. The intent of discussing climate change is to even suggest maybe and entertain the fact that maybe climate change doesn't exist at all. But does that preclude or eliminate our obligation to leverage technology that exists nowadays to assist in promoting and evolving to a better place in way of our ability to stop polluting the earth? And it happens in a lot of different ways. And while those discussions are going on, I find it ironic how, Russia cuts oil today and oil prices spike, but you can't get any type of favor in any of these transformational companies that are looking to bring new technologies to the forefront, because maybe they have a liquefied natural gas twist or a compressed natural gas twist, which is a fossil fuel, and therefore you can't touch it. It's faux pas, right? So on one hand, we'll support and acknowledge how important oil is to our global economy. But on the other hand, we don't want to lend any type of favor to any type of alternative solution out there that might have any type of nexus to fossil fuel. The irony in that just absolutely baffles me. Moreover, here in 2023, some of the discussion is about sideline money, not wanting to miss out on a stock market now that is trying to is trying to price in an inflation number that is monitored constantly, and an interest rate that has been rising significantly over 2022, but the schools of thought would suggest that we're probably coming to more of an end of that cycle. And so the game right now, evidently, that's being defined for you is, can you get in before the FOMO buy that happens when all of the interest rates cease to be going up and perhaps maybe even going to more of a normalized schedule, and dare I suggest quantitative easing. I really hope we don't resort to that, and I hope we don't resort to it quick, but I really do foresee the back half of 2023 being a very, very intriguing time in global stock market, especially developed Europe and the United States. I think 2023 is going to be an interesting, and even if it bleeds over into 2024, I'm totally good with that. The reason why I mention this to you guys is to truly understand where I'm coming from and where I think this transformational shift may happen in moving toward some of these technologies that exist that have the ability to contribute to cleaning the earth. Now, this is not a problem that is small in nature. When I was introduced to the Aduro Clean Technologies initiative, I had never heard of the company before, but it was around last October-ish when I was actually introduced to the company. And I thought, okay, this is interesting, but aren't we already recycling? Okay. And so upon my due diligence, I realized that 80% of the plastics are not recyclable. A comb of the competition in the space like Cielo, like Pure Cycle, some of the companies out there, and the technologies that they're bringing to bear actually have a very, very difficult time tackling the three of the divisions of plastic that are very, very difficult, if not economically unviable and impossible to recycle. And those are your polypropylenes, polyxylenes, and polystyrenes. Okay. Those are the derivatives of plastic that have such a compound molecular structure that they are very, very difficult to deconstruct, and to deconstruct those in the traditional means. And some of the companies now boast technology that requires such a high energy input that the cost is prohibitive. In other words, the cost of actually recycling that plastic in the manner that they do is not economically viable. Okay. And I initially, within 5 or 10 minutes, I thought that this is crazy. We already recycle, and coming to realize what this story brings to bear, there is an education piece to it that is absolutely critical in understanding that Aduro is looking to contribute to the circular economy. Okay. And I want you just to take a step back for just a moment, and I want you to realize how enormous plastic is in our daily lives. If you've done some Google searches and you've done some due diligence, you would be hard pressed to not find that some of the developed nations have gone so far as to ship their plastic to those other nations, even some of the developed nations on the earth, China specifically, which has just recently banned the imports of plastic. They just can't take it anymore. But some of the underdeveloped nations that really get dumped on as kind of the world's trash can, and they absolutely do not have the technology. And there's some horrific graphics online if you do end up going, and you'll end up seeing the same thing I saw here in 2023 and questioning how in the hell we're doing this in 2023. And I go back to my point about it being a global initiative for the green movement or any of that. In these countries, they're actually affecting the people that are in the vicinity of these rudimentary methods of burning the plastic and putting those emissions into the atmosphere, yes, but on a local level, affecting the patrons in each of those smaller communities. And I just cringe when I see that stuff because it looks like something that could have potentially been possible in the 1950s. But here in 2023, it's just appalling that with the chemical and the chemistry really and the technology that we have, that this type of activity is going on around the world. Rudimentary methods with lack of support, lack of government oversight, lack of workers to carry out certain quality systems within each of these. I don't even want to call them businesses. They look like, organizations that are trying their very best to dispose of this stuff from a very large perspective, and the world is just dumping on them now. For the plastics that don't end up in some of these underdeveloped nations, all too often the plastic ends up getting just dumped into the ocean. It ends up in landfills, and what we're finding is plastic degrades super slow over time, and the small particulates that actually degrade from the landfills themselves actually change the competition of the soil and actually have an opportunity to make their way not only to the water table, but also to contaminate the soil indefinitely. Okay, just think about the small contaminant pieces of plastic that degrade over time. Those small pieces of plastic, they end up in the soil there locally, and as soil gets turned over, as it gets rained on, as it gets as it's been subject to erosion, things of just a natural coincidence. Those plastics, they don't go away. They end up being churned into the soil. And you might think, okay, well, what are we talking about here on a global scale of production per year? And I'm going to throw a figure at you that I can't even quantify. So don't even ask me to. But 380 million tons, 380 million tons of plastic are produced every year. I know with my deductive reasoning that there's no way that with the current methods and the disincentive of the 80% that I told you of that 380 million tons of plastic that's produced, that there is any way at all that we're coming even close to recycling in the circular sense that I think I and a lot of other people were under the impression that we're doing, and we are failing miserably at this front. The circular economy is a dream. It is not something that is realized in nature. And you have companies like Aduro and a few others as well. I left the link to Aduro Clean Tech.com. You guys can click over there. My whole thing on the independent investor channel is quite simple. A small investment in this company right now could mean something very, very special for you. Now, I don't care if you buy the stock or not. I don't care. But I also don't patronize people. I've just increased my position, fully disclosed on the latest video that I released on Aduro. I've increased my position to 25,000 shares. That's what I have. Okay. I bought my last share position. I paid a little bit up for it. I was a little bit frustrated by the fact that the stock just never went down outside of a few moments during the trading day every day, and it was very, very difficult to pick up on the fly or on the dip because the stock has performed quite well year over year, up over I think 34%, 35%, and you might think, okay, that's pretty good for a micro cap with massive potential to grow and an addressable market that is close to $40 billion in just the plastics vertical alone. You know, you might think that that's pretty conservative. And in a positive market sentiment, I would agree with you. But any stock, especially a micro cap of $47 million to perform and outpace the S&P 500 and outpace most of the micro cap, small cap, medium and large cap markets. I mean, you had some of your largest companies roll off 50, 60, 75%. Even some of the companies that were really in favor over the last couple of years rolled off upwards of 90%. So when you have a company, Aduro, that is up and just last week made all-time highs, it requires our attention. Don't buy the stock, okay? But if we are going to call ourselves stewards of the game, and we're going to call ourselves interested in personal finance or interested in stock, look, I am, okay? And if you come on the independent investor channel and you expect me to give you, you know, the 3 stock picks of the week or whatever, I've subsided doing that because I just don't think that it truly has the transformational impact of something like this. Now, remember how I talked about the value approach to stock market investing? The majority of my wealth is in passive indexes. Okay. And I wouldn't change that for anything. I know that there's some fairly aggressive sharks that certainly look at the OTC market with a lot of the same skepticism as me, but I've also succeeded in picking out those gems of the market. In other words, those companies now in 2023 that do incur some pretty good scrutiny, especially on the quality boards and the venture markets that are doing some pretty impressive stuff. There's some companies on there doing some impressive stuff that are getting thrown out with the market. That I can tell you. And that is indicative of the market that we have now. The reason why I came on this Friday to actually share this story, I think we are on borrowed time with this company. I really do. I've watched the stock action go up on very, very little volume every single day. I monitor the company every single day, and its resilience is also worth acknowledging. Now, if there's any interest there to be had in the name, and you've never heard of the company before, I will have people that come across this live stream and they've never heard of the company before. I think we need to get over this idea that every company that is a pre-revenue company is going to fail to survive. I think we need to get over that. I think with the availability of information nowadays, I think we really need to start to buy into this idea that we can actually look at what is known in the marketplace, what is disclosed publicly, and you can find it all on adurocleantech.com. You can click over there and you can check it out. I visited the website many, many times, and I think you'll find the same level of value, even if you don't decide to take a financial position in the company, which is on your own due diligence. I think anybody on the globe can take a vested interest in understanding what this company is looking to bring to the table. I've got a good friend of mine tonight. It's a special, special treat. He's taken some time. I dropped the invitation on Yazan very, very short notice because I just got a whim to do this project tonight live stream. This was one of those things I could have come on and talked about, the stock market going to hell this week. And I just thought, you know what, let's shift in a little bit more of a positive direction, because what Aduro Clean Technology is doing, even into just starting 2023, has been nothing short of impressive. And I really think that you guys need to take note, follow the story, okay? Because it's a story that I'm going to continue to evolve with on the Independent Investor channel, guys. And I'm going to tell you, when I'm sitting on a stock that is becoming well known in the stock market, right now it is not. I want you to all have an equal and equitable opportunity to put your lenses on it and do your own due diligence and come up with your own thesis on the company itself. And perhaps maybe you'll find a lot of what I'm seeing, and seeing how exciting this small company is, less than $50 million market cap, and to see maybe if it deserves a place in your watch list or more. So I'm going to bring Yazan on just to say hi to the group here. It's a special treat to have him on. Yazan, you're live on the live stream. Good evening to you, my friend. How are you? Thank you so much for your time.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone, sorry to take so much of your time. And by the way, I'm a big fan of your Friday show. It's amazing the amount of free education that you give. Even for someone that has been in the market for 15 years, it is very refreshing to have someone like yourself, um, kind of tell it as it is and walk through the journey that you have done, whether it's, how you invest yourself, what you
Yeah.
do in life, and it's very inspiring. So well done.
Thank you, Yazan. I think just watching how quickly the markets can change from year to year, I think it is fair to suggest that the stock market now in 2023, you cannot buy into old onus and old ideologies when applying new strategies in the stock market. And I learned that a long, long time ago, in that nobody has the smoking gun, nobody has all the right answers. But I think with the availability of information, people are going to soon realize that it is possible to find these companies like an Aduro Clean Technologies that has been in the making for 10 years. And by the company's admission, they have not come public until just a couple of years ago to really roll out their story. Is that right, Yazan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna talk a bit about this. So, look, as someone that is in the venture capital world, um, I cannot tell you how many times people come to our office, whether in Vancouver or in Dubai, and or we travel to see companies, and it's the next big thing. It's always there's this next big disruptor, next big thing,
Yeah.
and it's very rare to see this level of passion, this level of ownership, this level of when I say ownership, it's not even ownership at the stage of owning the stock. It's the insider ownership here is you know is amazing. But
Yeah.
to understand that offer and insiders for 10 years prior to going public, what they did is they didn't take a salary. They were, putting money into this of their own hard dollars, um, on top of the grants that they did. One of the funny things that I laugh at the market cap because people don't understand like just what till the day that they went public. And this is what got me very intrigued is when we were talking about the go public, um, and it's just so everyone does not feel that, oh, I missed the boat. When they went public at 55 cent Canadian, so around
Yep.
40 or less US.
Yep.
So it's only doubled since then. So it's not like you missed out on the big gains. The big run is yet to come. But when they went public, they showed me how much money they've sunk in hard cash, and they put
Yep.
in over 5 million Canadian between themselves, friends, family, and on top of that, they got you know close to $20 million in grants and research and support. Now, over for the first 3.5 years, him and Mark, the CTO, literally were shooting holes in this. They were just trying to kind of figure out why this is gonna fail. And that's part of the reason why I like it a lot because when you sit down with a founder, the biggest typical skepticism, especially in a pre-revenue, as you said, is you don't want to see a founder that's his you know mantra is I just want to go public so I can raise money.
Yeah.
This is the typical founders that I come across. It's I need access to cash. This is a guy no that he's saying like I came to market after making sure that our patent and IP portfolio is worth significantly more than at the time $50 million Canadian, so 40 million US.
Yep.
And then, on top of that, they started, and I really loved how they structured the deal. And I'm telling you, I've been around the venture, the CSC, the OTC markets. It is not, I don't think I came across a deal where the company's insiders have parked their shares. They only get their shares if they execute.
Yeah.
So to date, when they went public, they only got 1/3 of their shares. It was only after a year and some time that they passed their third-party validation by Western University, and that's when they got the second layer or the second tranche of their shares. You know, most founders, most insiders will always tell you, no, no, no. I mean, at best, they will say, okay, well, I'll take a 1 year, 2 year escrow. But, this shows you how much passionate they are and how much they believe in this. And this is something that I'm telling you, like, I don't see. not even, like I can't recall when was in 15 years of doing this. I can't recall when that happened. So the other thing that I think is worth noting is the value of the IP. I said this before, you probably said it yourself. I think Aduro on a IP evaluation, if someone was to come to say to Aduro, you know what, you've done a fantastic job on the plastics, on the heavy oil upgrading, on the, you know, some of the other things that people don't even talk about, the
Yeah,
renewable side,
yeah,
the you know, the foam mattresses, the um, so
tires. Yeah,
the tires, the rubber tires. Like you're talking about, the IP portfolio they have is, in my view, it's worth, you know, $200-300 million US,
yeah,
and
that's where I'm
that's
at.
like, so I think, and the validations that keep coming in are very important for everyone. So I think people should go to the website, as you said, and you know, they should read who they're associated with. You know, prior to talking, I know Shell is an easy target to kind of talk about, but I really encourage people to go and read about Brightlands Camelot. So Brightlands Camelot, about, I think it was a year or so ago, um, a year and a half ago, they came out and said, we're partnering with Aduro. We are gonna help Aduro, you know, come and open a, you know, come to the Netherlands and become part of uh, Brightlands Camelot. Brightlands Camelot is basically one of the top 10 in the world plastic recycling hubs. So that's where you see all of the majors, you know, all the major names in the plastic recycling. You will see them there. You'll see the Sabex, the Shells, the, you know, name, drop a name, they're gonna be there. So the great thing in that relationship was the validation was similar to Shell. They said we spent, and this is public information, so I am not saying something that
Yeah,
people cannot find. Uh, it's in the press release. It says that we for 20 years we haven't seen something similar to this. We haven't seen a company that can, um, you know, improve the characteristics of not only plastics but hydrocarbons.
yeah,
And you know, when I know if people paid attention a lot to what Ofer was saying last time he was on with
Crux.
Crocs, but Crocs interview, I know it sounds a bit, it goes over people's heads,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna try to simplify it. Look, the
Please.
world needs to reduce carbon emissions. So that is what decarbonization is all about. And that's why Shell selected Aduro. That's why, you know, the selection of Aduro and the talk about, you know, upscaling plastics, that's one way, that's one of the major methods of reducing carbon emissions. Because if you're able to upscale or upgrade plastics or heavy oil or whatever it is, you're going to be able to reduce that carbon emissions and you're going to improve the overall cycle, circularity, sustainability, use the name you want. Now, a year ago or 2 years ago, when you tell someone about circularity, they said, they would look at you funny and they're like, what do you mean? It just basically means the circle. Like you take the origin of any hydrocarbon, plastic, heavy oil, tar, and you turn it back to its origin after consumption. So, and that is massive value. You're talking about. I know, and you know, I am. I think these guys. One of the things that they have is really have a very hard time underselling themselves. They don't sell themselves hard. They're doers. They are people that go in, work 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
I was talking to Ofer a few hours ago, and he was literally in the business lounge heading to India. And he's like, I'm like, it's quite busy. And he's like, I'm on the phones. I'm setting up everything before I travel. And you can see like these guys live and breathe, like going on a weekend to India to ensure that he gets to see as many investors and as many people as possible.
Yeah.
So I don't see, again, the amount of passion that's here is insane. Now, again, dial it back to the average person. Look, guys, I have said this to Penny the other day and said, look, let's focus on the plastic so that people understand this. Today, the total accumulated plastics that we have is about 8 billion tons of waste plastic. Okay. I cannot tell you how big that is. That is like beyond big. That's insane. Okay. China has banned importing plastics since 2015.
Mhm.
Um, we are seeing plastics in landfills. We see them in oceans. We see them in you know everywhere. And what is happening, unfortunately, is they get exported to countries that are less fortunate because that's the only way that the developed world can get rid of them.
Yes.
Um, the recycling component is only 9% of that. So imagine, not 8 billion, okay? And let me add one more thing to this, okay? This is very valuable product because if you're able to recycle it efficiently, every ton that you recycle is worth north of $1,000.
Yes.
So I don't need to tell you how many zeros that becomes. It becomes insane.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in addition to this, and as you mentioned on one of your videos, so we are currently there's kind of a debate of whether we produce 350 or 400 million tons
Yeah.
per year, or whatever. But that number is only gonna grow higher in the next 20 so years. We're gonna be hitting 1 billion tons per year of plastic waste. And let me tell you something. If you heard any person, Joe Rogan, just name, they all laugh at the idea of we're gonna ban um, the like single-use plastic. That's a joke.
Yeah.
You're not gonna change consumer behavior that way. Telling people that you're gonna have to get your drink in a carton straw. No one's gonna adopt this. It's garbage. I tried it so many times,
Yeah.
and I'm telling you, like I half through the thing, it just melts up. And I was reading also about it, and it's actually it's not healthy. These things are really not healthy. So it's what they're trying to do is just a bit of a greenwash that doesn't resolve the problem.
Yeah.
So now we know the size of the problem. It's massive. Okay, so let's say 350 million tons per year at an average value of $1,000 per ton. You do the math. The size of this market is like in the hundreds of billions of dollars. Okay, so now it comes back to okay, so we know the size of the market, and now what's next? Okay, well, how do we make money? How does Aduro, you know, we're not in a as a big investor of Aduro, I'm not in it for just I mean, it's a great social part and I love it, but I also love the fact that there is a ton of money to be made on this. And when I say a ton, it's not like I'm being I'm not exaggerating. Why? Because if all of you, if the current solutions out there, they can only touch 80 to 90% of the existing plastic waste. The rest of it, they cannot really do a dent for. The rest of it just basically goes to the ocean, landfills,
Yep.
gets burned, whatever. So you're not really like the same thing that Ofer said last time. We're not competing with these guys. There are 70 other technologies, good for them. Let's have another 70 other technologies. Let's
Yep.
have another 100 Aduros. It doesn't matter. The market space is insanely large. I'm gonna use an example because we do use Pure Cycle. I'm gonna use Pure Cycle in a second, but I'm gonna use an example that we haven't used before. And I just learned this week speaking with um, their some of their R&D team. So we were talking about Agilex, and I said, Agilex has a couple of pilots. They make some revenue. They're losing a ton of money. They have a two, they have a 250 million US market cap, and the guys in the US, and the analysts behind them are saying this should be worth close to $1 billion. And I'm just trying to kind of get wrap my head around it. So I asked one of their researchers. I said, like, what do you think of Agilex? It's like, the sales pitch that they have where Agilex is literally it's paralysis plus. It's again just a slight improvement to paralysis, so a slight improvement to a thermal regime, which is very high level of energy. So instead of 1,000 Celsius, they probably are at 800 Celsius. So it's again burning. Doesn't matter. It's like hilarious. But they go and they market themselves as, well, we have a 50 to 60% yield. He told me that is a pure garbage when I hear it. And I said, why? And he's like, well, if you take a ton of plastic and you turn it to half a ton or 500 kg or
Right.
liters of uh, terrible, terrible fuel, like fuel that is you cannot sell in the market. What is the value of this? Like, what should be the value of this? And I laughed. I said, well, it's clear in their financials. Like they make revenue, but they lose a ton more than
Yeah.
the revenue they make. And it's like, exactly. So, outside of the way that, outside of them being able to showcase it and them having, a few good partners. And again, the purpose here is not to take down any company. I
Of
mean,
course. Of course.
I seriously don't think that it matters because, as we said, it will take 100 Aduros to really, make a dent. But it's just for your audience to realize how disconnected the valuation is. And the reason why I picked Agilex is because Agilex trades on OTC markets. It trades in I think in somewhere in Sweden or Finland, I forgot, but
Hmm.
one of the Nordic countries. But I mean, it just gives you the idea that this, despite it being an OTC stock, it's just the only difference is they do have 3 or 4 analysts behind them, and they have crossed the road of moving from retail investors to kind of more institutional. The same thing goes to, turn the page and Pick Pure Cycle, $1.5 billion. We talked about it before. It's a mechanical approach, so it's very selective. You have to take the cream of the crop type of plastic. You have to build a central unit. You know the central unit is $200-300 million. That is on your dime, and their technology is not theirs. It's they licensed it from
PG.
Procter and Gamble. And the funny part is, look, I mean, yeah, Procter and Gamble will provide them with the feedstock, but guess what? If they fail, Procter and Gamble says, okay, I'll get back the technology and the IP and find someone else. So hence why I keep saying the IP value of Aduro is just so undervalued. It's just people are still just you know starting to hear about it, and um, I'm gonna tell you, you have done a fantastic job in kind of highlighting it and telling people about it. Look, ultimately, everyone has to make their own decision and their own um,
Absolutely.
investment thesis. But I can tell you that, we've used the example of how do we make money? And we said, let's talk licensing and let's not talk about some crazy numbers. Let's use a very simple size. So we're saying 380 million tons produced every year. If you apply this on literally a million tons per year, let's call that this is going to happen in 2027. Who cares? On a licensing model, you'll be printing a royalty model of over 120 million US per year, like, and literally printing that money. So you're taking your royalty, and based on what my understanding from them, they're saying that the the facility, the average age of such a facility is 20 to 30 years.
Yep.
So for 20 to 30 years, you're literally making that royalty. Like, what is the value of that? I mean, I don't know. I know that it is way, 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 so much of a big number. So, I'm gonna um, stop here. Here's some questions from your audience. I also want to talk a bit about a couple of other things at the end, but I'm happy to address any questions that you or your audience have.
Yeah, thank you, Yazan. I really appreciate it. So you heard it, guys. Yazan is probably one of the most foremost experts on Aduro. A lot of the learnings has come from Yazan, and this is kind of the strength of the network piece that I speak about. And if you're one of the patrons tonight in the live stream on a Friday, the time and the minutes and the seconds that you are spending are well spent. You don't get any more of an intense look from me. I've already convinced myself. I'm there. It's going to be very, very incredible over 2023 to see this unfold. We did mention the Crux investor. I highly recommend that you catch that. And I think my question directly, and please leave your comments there. I'll get to you guys first. But my question, I think, for Yazan is to kind of double down. I know Crux was like, look, that's great, Yazan. Okay, that's great, Ofer. We're looking at 50 million, but I'm a money guy. He kept harping on the money piece. And I think Ofer, the presumption that I got from Ofer's response was, we are getting so much interest from underdeveloped nations, from major players in the industry, major interest. I don't even know if they know where to start to really carve out their piece. Now, if you have a little bit better of an insight, because Crux asked him 3 times, Ofer, I'm a money guy, please You got to let me know if I'm looking at this. We're talking about a pre-revenue company. If we need to wait until 2027, fine. But from now until then, we need to understand a clear path to profitability. And if it's going to be through the licensing model, how is it that you're going to really make that happen in nature? And I was kind of waiting. I watched the Ofer's response 3 or 4 times to try to glean a little bit as a share owner myself, because that to me is still kind of an unknown. We talk about the money piece and we kick around some of the figures, and they are staggering, Yazan. I think what it comes down for me right now is where in the hell do they start? What do they look to penetrate over the short term and looking to build those relationships medium to long term? I think Crooks was trying to press him on that a little bit, and Ofer, I kind of got the presumption as an independent viewer that Ofer was like, no, no, we've got interest all over the place. And I'm not really sure if he was streamlined on, hey, we're going to start here, or we're going to start here, or we're going to start here. Can you comment on that, Yazan?
Sure. So, look, one of the biggest things that I've learned in life is you pinned the right thing. I mean, you need to have someone that focuses on a few things, and that's one of the reasons why I like what these guys are doing is they are getting pulled from every side, but they decided to focus their energy and time on plastics for now, and secondary on the heavy oil. Okay. Now they could, and I'm telling you, there's so much interest in the rubber tires, there's so much interest in the
Oh yeah.
foams, and there's so much interest. There's like right across, but they're focused on the plastics. They also have narrowed it down where they're saying to partners, and I think a lot of these partners are such as Shell. So, for example, Shell has a goal that by 2025 they want to recycle 1 million tons of plastic. Now, the default that they had was we're going to do that through pyrolysis. Then comes Aduro and obviously changes the entire paradigm. And now Shell has to go through and Aduro has to go through the 12 months of, these
Yeah.
testings. But if Aduro just winds up, one client like Shell with 300,000 tons per year, we are laughing to the bank. Okay,
Oh yeah.
so
Yep.
so the focus point is I think they are going to focus on the clients that they currently are engaged with, and some of these are public, some of them are not. When they keep saying we have 15 ongoing conversations, they are dialing it down because again, if they are gonna accept every person that knocks their door, there's no way that they're gonna get to it. So to go back to it, I think they have been very methodical in saying we need not to lose focus. So customer A, Shell, B, X, Y, Z, here's the solution. You're gonna come in and do a feedstock testing with us. You
Yep.
have this type of um, you know, PE, PP, PET, whatever you want. We're gonna test it for you. We're gonna charge you a few $100,000. So every pilot of these, for a company that burns in the year about call it $4 million Canadian, so less than 3 US. Okay, they don't need more than I would say 6, 7 pilots, 8 pilots, and they will be not pilots, sorry, feedstock testing, and
Yeah.
they will be able to cover their burn, which is why I think people are looking at this wrong. I think they keep harping on the how are you going to cover? How are you going to get this? And they're looking at it as one, we have a lot of interest from the capital market side. We keep getting people saying, well, we can't buy enough of the stock. We can't just sit on the bid and just wait for 10,000 shares. So we need to go into a financing. So that's one venue that they're getting. Second venue that they're getting is that they will start generating revenue from these feedstock testing, which will start as soon as these. In the case of Shell, I think we will see some revenue in Q1, Q2.
Yeah.
But I also think that once the two R2 machines are up and running, the R2 is basically the kilograms upscaling for plastic and kilogram or liters upgrading for heavy oil. Once these are up and running, all what they're going to do is test feedstock. While they're doing that, they're testing the feedstock, they're making money out of these test results. They're also gonna be building, and they haven't said much about it, but they keep saying we are gonna be building R3, sometime this year, early next year.
Yeah.
The intuition I get is that one of these partners that they're talking to is going to be a co-investor in building this, which is why I really like it, because also remember, like they did with NSERC and MyTax, basically what they're able to do is every dollar that they are getting, about at least 50% is being subsidized by some sort of a grant. So if they can get, whether it's equity or it's an investment or it's a partnership with someone, they will be able to, instead of, having to build everything at their dime and dilute, they're going to be able to do this with a partner. And I can tell you, once we finish R3, the tons per day, we as shareholders, the risk is off, because at that point,
Yep.
you can show the tons per day, and that's it. The next model is going to be commercial, commercial, commercial. You're not going to be, the only difference is going to be what type of feedstock, how big of a commercial operation you're going to be doing,
Yep.
and all that. And if you look at the revenue projection, you will see that by 25, they're already making money. They don't need the market. My question that I always ask myself is, do they let this company exist without being bought out
Yep.
till 2027?
Yep.
I don't know. I don't have the answer. But I wonder, because, and it could be like we're talking plastics, just not to kind of confuse people, but it could be that they, you know, completely outlicense one of those verticals, the other verticals that don't have the time, but they have the IP for.
Yep.
And that could be like a significant cash injection that could come in. And it could be by jurisdiction as well. So the possibilities here is just, I don't know, it's just wild. And it's one of those, like, I think it will click, and once it clicks, it's gonna go, euphoric, and
Yeah.
we'll look back and laugh at what's happening in the market right now. But for the time being, all what we can do is we can educate, and we can tell people, look at what they have, and it's right to be skeptical. I mean, everyone that I introduced the story to, at starting with myself, when I was introduced to this, I was like very skeptical. They converted me, and then I was able to find that this conversion has become much easier, especially after Shell, Brightlands, Western. There's a lot, and like I was talking to a someone in the oil and gas, and he's like, once they are processing heavy oil into lighter oil, like that vertical on its own is gonna be worth billions.
Oh yeah.
It's like, you don't get how tough it is for us in Canada. We have 5.5 million barrels in Canada that we export to you guys in the US. 30% of that is literally
Diluent.
the worst. Like it's just like a very, very heavy oil. So what do you do with this? You need to get 30% diluent
Yeah.
20 to kind of move this. So it's a major, major problem. So again, I know I'm trying to kind of keep it uh, precise. And the easiest way that I'm gonna say is you will buy, or I have bought Aduro for the plastic side, but I'm getting a free call option on all of
Yep.
the other. And I said this to Penny. I said, on a go forward, when you speak to your audience, tell them that you're getting a free call option without expiry. Like, when you buy
Yeah.
options and there's
Yeah.
like an
Yeah.
expiry date, and when you have like a no expiry, like as you go in time, there's decay and there's value for the fact. Go try to buy a Tesla option, and buy a 2025 $200 Tesla option. It will be like $70 just because of the time. You're getting the time factor for no value for all of these verticals. So
Yeah.
it's
Um,
hilarious.
I think that's a good segue. Mariusz came out with a really, really good explanation of the bitumen and the oil sands and the diluent that's necessary to make the oil flow in the pipeline. So I would invite you guys. I'm hard pressed. We've been doing this an hour. Not to mention Mariusz, who I hold in the highest regards on YouTube. You're getting a treat to get to consume his content. You get to sit across like you are tonight, free of charge. So I would invite you to Mariusz. He's got a really, really good catalog of Aduro content online. But Yazan, there's a couple questions here. One from the Everclear boy. He's a devout subscriber to the channel, and also Steve B, who's also talking about the Everclear boys talking about he can't figure out why the institutions aren't liking it. Any thoughts? And then, are there any institutions interested? So, has there been any real momentum built up on the institutional interest, or is it still just kind of in the unknown introduction category, Yazan?
No, I did introduce them to a couple, and they are in talks with institutions. The biggest, it's kind of a catch 2020. One of the institutions in the US told them, and I recall that I said that, and I think people laughed when I first introduced, when I was talking to Mariusz and his investors. I said, you know what? One of the investors in one of the institutions in the US told us, he said, we don't want you to, like, we have no issues with you at pre-revenue. We have no issues with where the technology, and that's before Shell. That's before Prospera, before like a lot of things. Anyway, um, it's like the only issue that we have is your market cap. Your market cap is such tiny that we cannot, how are we going to position ourselves? Like, how do we get an institution behind it? I think we're getting to a sweeter spot where smaller Canadian institutions can come in. I can tell you that there's a fund that is now a shareholder of Aduro. Um, and these guys have, bought probably 800,000 shares. They told me that any offering that the company has, they'll be taking part of. So it's just a matter of the size of the market cap of Aduro. I think what we're going to see in the next 6 months is we're going to see unfortunately to say this, but Canadian institutions are gonna, have the first bite, just because Canadian institutions are willing to take a bite at that, sub $100 million
Yeah.
valuation.
Yeah.
But then it's gonna move to Europe and the US. It's not like that's what I think the only limitation.
That's great. Thank you for that insight, Yazan. I think we're kind of getting to the end here a little bit. I may kind of segue us out, but certainly want to give you the last word, and just on behalf of the audience and the channel. And thank you, Yazan. I'm just in debt to you. The power of information and just the introduction to the company. I've done my own due diligence. I don't need to be pushed in either direction. But just to understand an introduction to the company, what they bring to the table, and then allow people to do their own work on it, I think they're going to find exactly what we're talking about. And if they don't need to hear it from us, they can certainly find it on the website. I've shared those in all my videos. There's a few of us online that are sharing the story. I just chronicled and threw Passive Income Investor on there as well. He's helping to provide the awareness to social media, and Penny Queen is absolutely fantastic content creator. Mariusz and myself and Yazan has been more than connected to all of us, helping to keep us up to speed on all of the media releases and all of the news as it's been forthcoming in 2023. But Yazan, I certainly want to give you the last word and thank you for your time, and give the group here kind of your last word here on Aduro going forward in 2023.
First of all, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate your audience listening to me. Apologies if I took so much and I dragged this out. Look, I'm telling you as someone that has been around the block in the venture capital world. Aduro, if it was not for them having listed in Canada, this company by now, and by the way, just full, one of the things that I've seen come across, 2, 3 companies in the US, institutions, said, guys, just delist from Canada, which as if it's so easy. Just delist from Canada,
Yeah.
go private. We're going to take you on NASDAQ at multiple valuations. So to me, that was like, what?
Wow.
First of all, you can't do that, but obviously it's great to hear, right?
Yeah.
I think I suggest people, look, no one can help you help yourself except yourself. So everyone's got the weekend. I know everyone's busy, but this is not a common company. This is not a common investment opportunity. These don't come by so often. Trust me, I've been in the business for 15 years. Okay. I see lithium companies that have nothing but a drill that is about to start in the ground that is at way higher valuation than Aduro, just because they're close to a mine that is close to it's just insane.
Yes.
So do yourself a favor, review the material that's by Ryan, by independent investor, by the people that has created so much content, so much time, put so much energy into getting it out there. And I'm telling you, even if you become a skeptic, and that's fine, just put it on your watch list, see what the company is doing. Once their R2s are up and running, that's gonna be your next level where you're gonna see it in action. You're gonna see the upscaling of plastic, the upscaling of heavy oil in action, and that's not far away. That's whatever, a couple months, 3 months out. Who cares? That's nothing. But if like I'm telling you, this is not a common opportunity. It is mispriced. I keep saying it's a mispriced opportunity. Look at all the players in the space. They're in the billion-dollar segment. Those are that are public. Pure Cycle 1.5 billion, and they're a mechanical approach, so it's less. It's inferior in terms of technology. Bottom line, there's a lot of homework to be done, but once you get to the conviction that personally I have around this, you will sleep very well not looking at the share price.
Well said. Well said. You heard it here. Thank you so much, Yazan, for your time this evening on a Friday and short notice as well. I think you can foot stomp the idea that we need to keep this topic out there. We need to continue to keep it relevant. And I think once this story really starts to snowball, I think the organic churn is going to turn more natural. And it's just going to be fun at that point to sit back and watch the ride, because I think that we're going to be talking about this time right now in the rearview mirror as a time where we were looking at an opportunity, earmarked it as that opportunity, and really reflect back on it being one of those opportunities of a lifetime that you speak of. Yazan, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you. Have a great weekend, and we'll be in touch. All right.
You as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yazan. Good evening. Yeah, so you heard it here, guys, but just a real treat. Yazan's fantastic. This is part of the value proposition here on the channel, where we get to hear those insights, and really fantastic. It's think of the amount of connection that we're bringing together through social media. I'm sitting in my living room, connecting with all you folks, and I do want to thank you for staying with us through the totality. There wasn't anybody that left the live stream tonight. Yazan kept the butts in the seat, and I think that's important. And it's not important from the perspective of coming in here and thinking that you caught a lightning bolt to the heavens. It's not about that. I am absolutely 100% convinced that we will be telling a different story 6 months from now. I am absolutely convinced that a year down the line, we will be telling a different story than the one that we've told here tonight. Some of the things that we discussed are reality. We're talking about $50 million in market cap, and that just does not garner the attention necessary to get a lot of that institutional interest that some of the gallery had brought forward, and it's part of the part of the due diligence and identifying, look, it is a pre-revenue. Okay, what is the realistic chance that we step into some of those customer engagements that Yazan was talking about? How many could that potentially mean? He talked about 7 or 8 of those to just be at break even. That's easy. That is easy money. And I want you to point you to the investor slide deck on the website. They're talking about 78,500 tons per year on the largest example that they give for the IP. Yazan was talking about upwards of 1 million in production per year. I think they can do that with certain clients on a singular basis. I do. I think if they don't start out initially and they can knock out that 1 million tons, and they start out at 100,000 tons, I think what Yazan talked about is the 20, 30 years of just a royalty payment over the lifespan, and then the potential to build in to that potential capacity that each respective business needs. That, in essence, is what you're investing in. Is right now, it takes the most amount of imagination to extrapolate and kind of wrap your mind around what the potential is. And right now is the very most difficult time to do that, when we don't have those quantifiable metrics. And Yazan also mentioned, once we do have those metrics and we do have that anticipated yield on the back end when R3 is complete, that's probably at most a year away, at most. Okay. Now, I know that if Aduro could build the thing and put it out there tomorrow, they would, but they are not there yet. The question is, do you think that they will be? I'm of the conviction that they will. And I've put a timestamp on it Yazan mentioned it. He thought probably Q4 2024-ish, Q1 2024, I think is where we are, in that ballpark. So what? So what? When we're talking about those predictable revenue streams, then you're talking about the ability not only to generate revenue internally, but also to extrapolate a pure value for the company. And right now, you know, the value proposition, Yazan mentioned 2 to 300 million. That's exactly where I am. The CEO is a little more conservative, suggesting maybe an 80 to 120 million right now on just the IP, nothing else, and they own it all. So it was kind of a cool opportunity to do the live stream on Aduro. This is something that I hadn't even thought of, um, because it's kind of a step away from, you know, my normal value investing type of investing awareness, debt consolidation, et cetera, et cetera. I talked about the statistics at the top of the live stream and talked about how deficient people are in their savings rate, their spending rate, the ability to spend themselves into debt and then spend a lifetime just getting out of debt. It speaks to the amount of household wealth. Okay, I am an anomaly. All right, if you think that I'm just somebody who comes onto YouTube and just stumbles over my words, I practice what I preach. What you see is what you get. It doesn't get any more real than this. Somebody like myself who has a blue collar existence has no business with the amount of wealth that I have. And I've done so not being able to circumvent financial markets without being scarred a few times. Okay. And I scour the landscape pretty intimately. And I think this is probably one of those lifetime opportunities. Yazan mentioned that they don't come across very often. He's right. He's 100% right. And I think for a lot of people out there, I mean, right now trading it, I think it closed right today at 78 cents, something like that. I mean, you're talking about 100 share position being less than $100. And I think if this does anything of what we expect it to be, I think even a small position could materialize into something fairly special. It really could be a start. It could be a lifelong position. I think the most difficult thing for me, if it does not get taken over at some point, and somebody just comes in and says, hey, I'm going to give you 10, 12, $15 billion for the company, and just buy it out, and Aduro remains a household name for the long term, I think it could be one of those plays to where you have to be very careful on the back end, you know, exiting the position for $250,000 when in fact you're leaving, you know, 2.5 to 3 million on the table on the back end, because Aduro's value proposition really materializes over that 5 to 10 year period, from understanding what those value metrics are: top end revenue, you know, reoccurring revenues, new customers being brought in, understanding their ability to duplicate that model over and over and over again, right? So once that becomes more defined in the landscape, then it's really just going to come down to that one word of execution that I talked about with Ofer Vicus, when he was a guest on the channel. That was really very cool. But Hello Please has a question here: what platform to use to purchase the OTC? This is a little bit tricky. Purchasing OTC is a little bit tricky. You got to use limit orders. You got to pick the limit amount that you want to pay, and you can't be aggressive. Okay, you got to pick the limit that you want and kind of wait for that order to fill. So it's not like your commonly traded stocks. I use interactive brokers to purchase the shares in. I don't disclose that on the disclaimer. I do disclose the date of purchase and the exact amount that I paid for the shares. And I'm at 25,000 right now, but Charles Schwab does require you to call. I have heard that before. TD Ameritrade and Fidelity also are available to purchase. I can tell you that Merrill Edge is not. They are my main broker, and they told me I kind of laughed actually. They were like, "We'll wait till the company gets to $5 a share and then we'll offer it." And I was like, "Well, I don't really want to purchase the shares when they're $5. I want to purchase them when at the time they were around 58 cents. I really had a chance, and I put a token buy in, I think with a 5 in front of it. Those are the only block of shares that I was able to pick up that low because I was testing a new account brokerage. Had to get a little bit of the permissions dialed in on Interactive Brokers. Interactive Brokers is not a friendly, user-friendly platform. It's very intuitive. So if you are a beginning investor slash, pursuing of the more aggressive markets through the OTC, I think you'll find that probably some of the other brokers might suit yourself. Probably TD Ameritrade and Fidelity probably would be the best choice for you, and then Charles Schwab, and then finally Interactive Brokers, which I really like them. But it took me a little bit to get to learn it, and it was a setting that took me quite a long time. It was a self-designation setting to allow myself to be able to engage in that level of trading. So hopefully you find more ease of use than I did, but that's just my honest opinion and tutorial, and I hope that helps you. Happy hunting in your quest for that. But yeah, I want to get to the top here, go through some of the questions. Very, very cool. Daniel's in the house, man. You got the moderator of the night tonight, Daniel. So congratulations. Hopefully you're still in the group here. It'd be kind of cool. Less than 2 weeks for this huge. So we've got some cool folks in here, man. Some of the normal folks in here this evening. Very cool stuff. Thank you. I really appreciate you guys sitting through that. That was a special treat for me, man. I'm intrigued by that type of stuff. And you have to understand that if you're having the ability to sit back, Yazan does his homework. He's a steward of the game, and he spends a lot of time in due diligence. So if you doubt his insights, I would ask you to retract your thought, because Yazan's one of the premier extrapolators of opportunity that I've seen, and I've seen a lot of people pose as if they are. Yazan's a lot more about words, or a lot more about action and a lot less about words. And you really need to listen to what he says, because he does a good job, and he really stays pulsed in with the company as well. Very cool. Wasteland Wanderer. That's a cool thumbnail, man. Good evening to you. Very cool stuff. Glad I met you. Brother from another mother. Climate's always changing. Yeah, I'm kind of an apolitical type of fella. I don't really like to buy into a lot of that stuff. My philosophy is really, really simple, and I thought this was something that Joe Biden kind of missed on the address, State of the Union this week. There's heckles in the gallery from one side of the aisle, and then some from the other. I think everybody's missing the point. I think people are too busy being bipartisan, or partisans, I might add. And I think if people would just sit back and be a human being for 2 seconds, I think believing in global warming or not is not the issue. I think you have the choice either way. But I think my thing is, why not do what it is that we know that we can do? Why not allow this technology to be leveraged in the marketplace? If it fails, no problem. But there's some serious validation going on right now to suggest that some of these technologies are very, very real, and that they do absolutely have a place in the marketplace. And it's going to be fun to see some of these things really take a foothold and really start to turn back value. Insofar as there was one question in the group here that asked how big of an impact they could potentially make. Well, that's a good question. I guess in year one, I guess it would be fairly minuscule. In year 5, it would be bigger than year 1, and in year 10, it would be bigger than year 5. Where could the company be in allowing institutions to chew into their consumption or their production rate and realize back some of that into that circular economy we talked about? I think any step toward the potential of taking a bite out of our yearly production rates of plastic, I think it's a step in the right direction, because the disconnect that I talked about at the top of the live stream is very, very real. And I think we've got an awful big bridge to gap. I think the key is to start on that evolution of understanding what it is that's possible. And once we understand what is possible, we can start to kind of articulate where we go from here. So really appreciate you guys. Fantastic. Thank you for the question. Ever clear, boy. Great point, Ryan. Always use limit orders, patience. Yep, exactly. I mean, that's legit. It's a little bit of learning, but it's okay. I think right here, it's a ground floor opportunity. I think it is relatively unknown. I know that based on the volume that I monitor from day to day. Unlike Yazan, he says he sleeps easy and doesn't watch the stock. I don't believe him. That's all right. I do enough watching the stock myself. I'm fascinated by the story. I'm a student of it, and I've got enough discipline coming out my years that I don't. I'm long the shares. So monitoring the stock is not an attempt to say I'm already up huge. I could exit the position, on Monday with a nice profit, and I'm not in it for that. I'm not in it for that at all. I think my first look at the company will be a year from now, when we're looking at R3. From now until then, it's a futile effort, but it's kind of fun. I'm a dork. I like stock market investing, and I think that's kind of why you guys resonate with the channel, because you own a small piece of it, and whatever small contribution you're making to your own lives in empowering your own personal journey, guys. So we'll sign off for this evening. Went a little overtime tonight. Why the hell not? It's my project. I can do what I want. But a big thanks to Yazan tonight. That was a special show, and I hope you guys found some value out of it as well. So guys, enjoy the rest of your weekend. I appreciate you tuning in to the fastest 60 minutes on YouTube. Be well, and we will catch you next Friday on the Independent Investor Channel live stream, guys. Be well, and we'll see you next week.